I opposed this legislation when it was introduced in July, and I'm opposing it being rolled over again in July. I predicted that it would, of course, be rolled over. Many government TDs said that they found it unpalatable, they were concerned by it, but that it was for a limited period of time, so they'd accept it. And of course, now they're accepting it because, well, it's a power that won't be used. I'm suspicious of powers that won't be used in the hands of civil servants, or indeed pliable ministers who do whatever their civil servants want. When it was introduced, you, in your speech, talked about three different groups: those who are vaccinated, those who have an immunity from recovery, and they are both addressed in the law. But when it was introduced, there was a third group, you might recall, that we were discussing, and those were those who were going to have a certificate based on having tested negative for COVID-19. And in the course of the summer, we were going to see that. Where are they now? What happened to that? In the legislation itself, Minister, there are three different proofs of immunity. One, a digital COVID cert, the EU digital COVID cert. Another, a cert of a type prescribed by the Minister in regulations made under Section 31AB4 that would have enabled you to allow people who had a negative test to enter a bar, but the silence now is as deafening as it was throughout the summer. We don't know what happened to that. And the third one is, of course, any form of information or proof verifying in such manner as may be prescribed in relation to the person to whom the document is issued that the person has recovered from COVID-19. What happened to that? Didn't do anything with that either, did you? Notwithstanding the fact that the recommendations from the start were that anybody who had COVID in the previous 9 months would get an immunity certificate so they could go about their lives, because the EU COVID cert was just for those with 6 months, because at the time that was introduced, the evidence was slightly different, and it's still evolving. I mean, there's a study recently based on a considerable amount of data from the Maccabi Institute in Israel that immunity from recovery from COVID is far greater than the immunity acquired through the vaccine. Now, that doesn't mean that people should go out and get COVID, because, of course, there are considerable risks involved in that, and I'm not suggesting people take that approach. And you have to be careful, because you have to qualify everything, because if you question any of this, you're labelled an anti-vaxxer for having legitimate questions. Now, Minister, I want to raise the case of one particular constituent of mine. All 5 members of her family had COVID in January. In May and August, 2 of their children received a single dose of vaccine. In July, in response to a query, the HSE replied with a senior medical officer of the National Immunisation Office saying that they would be considered vaccinated with a single dose. In September, the HSE issued a HSE immunisation guidelines based on the advice of the National Immunisation Advisory Committee, saying that indeed a single dose would suffice for those who were under 50 and were immunocompetent. So this family went looking for their certificate, and in September, right through August, September, they were looking for this. Presumably, she doesn't say why, but presumably so they could travel, or presumably so they could go about their lives. They went looking for a certificate. After calling 3 times a week for over 4 weeks, they got a COVID cert that suggests that they were partially vaccinated. Contrary to the scientific advice that you received from NIAC, contrary to the evolving scientific information coming out of the international community. So, Minister, if you won't listen to the law passed by this Parliament, will you at least listen to the science? Because that's the mantra that we've been listening to for over 18 months now.